Good morning, everybody, and welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Friday, the 17th of January. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined by Johnny McFarlane. First of all, how's it going, Johnny?
Good. Always a delight to be on with two esteemed Rangers men.
Right answer. Stevie also joins us. How's it going, Stevie?
I'm good, Derek. Are you all right?
Hunky-dory, yeah, could not be better. But good that you've joined us. Speaking off air there about breakfast choices, Johnny, what is your go-to breakfast in the morning?
Scrambled egg roll and a cup of coffee.
No messing about, no nonsense. Stevie?
I don't know. Normally just a bit of toast, but this morning I had a wee bit of corned beef in my toast. It was nice. Love a wee bit of corned beef. Do you know what, Derek? I need to tell you, and this is great for all the baldies out there, right? I got a new toy. Do you know one of those handheld things you shave your head with?
Yes.
It's like right? I got one. I bought one for myself just to see it. Honestly, it's life-changing. I absolutely love it. So if you're a baldy and you're thinking about trying it, you should get one. And if Remington are watching, I'm available for sponsorship and endorsements also.
Fortunately, both Derek and I have a magnificent head of hair.
Yeah. Some would disagree. Some would disagree. Todd Catnall saying we thought we were going to hopefully here. My connection is unstable a little bit, but we'll back on regardless. So fingers crossed it holds up. I might need to go onto my phone. But Johnny, we'll kick on because people are tuning in because they want to talk all things Rangers. Big news yesterday to emerge with regards to the future of the Rangers B team, and it looked like a big call has been on that, where the current structure will no longer continue. Rangers preferring now to send some of the B team players out on loans as opposed to playing these best v best games. Now we've seen Robbie Fraser and Cole McKinnon heading out on loan this month, but they've cited the lack of competitive football as the reason why to go down a different route with regards to the B team. Can you just update us on the latest? It's a topic that has been a real discussion on the show for
Derek, I'm going to jump in there because your connection, you seem like you're coming in from Afghanistan or somewhere in the deep, darkest reaches of South America or outer Mongolia or something like that. You're breaking up. Yes, so the news is that the Rangers B team will no longer take part in the games system. I think that was a situation derived from the management of Michael Beale. I think he felt that would be a more appropriate use of the B team resource than playing in the Lowland League. I said at the time I disagreed with that. Don't think the Lowland League's perfect by any means, but I still thought competitive games against men was more useful than intermittent games against other youth sides. I think that's proven to be the case. And generally, I think the club has decided, with a big element of both Coppin and Clement's decision-making on this, that the young players that are suitable for the B team, that are in that B team at the moment, would be better served by being out on loan, playing with men in men's leagues, playing competitive football, and that the game system will be scrapped. So that's the situation as it stands. There's still a B team. The B team will continue to take take games in the Glasgow Cup, and the Challenge Cup. Obviously, Rangers won the Glasgow Cup, and the Challenge Cup is they're out. They got knocked out in, I think, the semi-finals. So with regards to that, there's no more games this season, but I don't think the B team is going to cease to exist. But I'm sure it will take part in the restructure and the review that's going on at the moment into the club behind the scenes by independent adjudicators around football structures and management. And we'll have a more consistent way forward once that's done. What I would say is, and I think it's important to stress, this is not what Rangers want. This isn't a silver bullet for youth development. This isn't the ideal scenario. The fact is, Rangers worked with the SFA They worked with a number of youth development experts. Celtic are in full agreement as well that the best pathway for young players in Scotland is to be like almost every other league in Europe and have B teams put into the pyramid structure. But unfortunately in Scotland, for some reason, we are extremely thrown and don't seem to want to discuss that notion or understand why it's better for youth development, even though every youth development expert in Europe seems to think that it's a clear and obvious decision to make and that it's beneficial to young players. But there we go. The fact is, politically, it's just untenable. Rangers tried to bring in this Conference League system. That didn't work. And so we are in the situation we are in. And therefore, they have to find some sort of solution to allow these young players to get game minutes. So I would expect quite a few more to go out on loan between now and the end of the window. And it'll be interesting to see all these boys who will be scattered around Scottish and English football, maybe even foreign football, and see how they get on in the next 4 or 5 months, because some people sink and some people swim. Hoping for is a number of swimmers, and it'll be interesting to see who those are.
Yeah, I've went on my personal hotspot on my phone, so hopefully we're away from those Wi-Fi issues. Talk if you're listening, sort it out. But there we go. Stevie, do you agree with this move from Rangers?
I don't agree with the criticism of talk. I'm with them and they're great. So
other service providers are available.
I never thought we'd be sitting here Jonny talking about swimmers and stuff either at this time in the morning. But here we go. What do I think of this from the B team? I think the biggest problem Rangers have got, right, is that as soon as anyone shows any potential and breaks into the first team, somebody tries to steal them. And then they're forced to give lucrative contracts when that player maybe isn't ready for them yet. And there's a number of examples in the actual first team of boys who are maybe getting money that a first team player in Scotland should be getting. So that's a real issue for Rangers, and I think they need to look at that kind of structure as well and kind of preempt these things better, because we've seen it even with, just take for example Ross McCausland when he broke into the first team and the interest that was, interest from various teams in him as well. So Rangers then had to go and give him a new contract and make sure he stayed and things like that as well. And I think that's one of the biggest issues which we need to fix. But I do agree that a lot of what Jonny says, about having teams in a B team in the pyramid system and all that, it does make perfect sense. I don't know why we're so backwards in our thinking with that. And I know it went to a vote and it was completely clamped down, and I understand that. Fair enough. I think it put other teams that were trying to progress down and things like that, and I understand why it maybe didn't go through. But there needs to be a kind of wee bit of revolutionary thinking in terms of how do we help our younger players get to the best levels. And even seen when we were in the Lowland League, I agree with Jonny, I don't think we should have come out of that, but we even seen the progress of Alex Lowry and things like that. And yeah, he did stagnate, but he burst onto the scene from playing men's football at that level. So this is where Rangers have quite an issue. If you think about the likes of like Adam Devine, Alex Lowry, Cole McKinnon, Leon King, there's a cluster there who probably will go on, and even if you put Robbie Fraser in that bracket, to play, football at a decent level in Scotland and things like that. And these boys will be good players, but you wonder just if Rangers have missed out a trick slightly by not being able to expose them to first team football quicker at a level in Scotland where we could really help them progress into our first team as well. So because there's such a gap now between once you get 18 and first team, it's like there's a big void. And I just think that as a country, while we're wondering how to progress our youngsters, we should be looking at that as a priority.
Absolutely. Well, we've seen Clinton Enciala getting an opportunity just thrust in, and it's a sink or swim situation. He seems to be doing okay. Interestingly, of course, Philip Clement was speaking about this recently, I think at the AGM. He was speaking about it in great detail, describing the jump between the B team and the first team as being too big. He says, I think what this country misses is B teams who play in the second league. That would help a lot. You see in countries where a lot of young players get chances and grow, they have the step in between, like Belgium and Holland, where the B teams of several clubs play in the second league. The step is not that big, and then more players aged 21 and 22 are ready for the first team because they've played at 17, 18 and 19 in the second league. I see people in Scottish football want to make things better, but that is a step they are not open for yet. I'm sure it will be a very good thing for Scottish football. That's a wider discussion, isn't it, Jonny? For one, I would bring back the reserve league today if possible. I think that is a glaring opportunity for young lads to learn the game and develop faster than what they are at this moment in time. Stevie mentions that sort of chasm between B team and the first team. I think that would certainly aid that.
Well, I know what you're saying, but the environment doesn't exist that used to exist in the 80s when there was a number of pros that weren't playing in the first team would play in the reserve team, and you would get that environment whereby a young player coming through might be partnered, for example, with, say, a John Brown coming back from injury, and the learning that they would get from that would develop them. But it's just not the same. The squads, I don't think, are big enough outside of Rangers and Celtic. I think there's financial issues around it, and I think the game's moved on, and I'm basing that on the amount of ex-pros that tell me that and the amount of people in the game that tell me that the reserve league isn't really an answer. Listen, this is going to be controversial, but I've thought about this a lot, so I don't mind saying it. I'm starting to wonder, because of the issues that Stevie has highlighted about the amount of money that's going on in youth football at Rangers. There's some people who would say that considering the spend, considering the investment is anathema, because Rangers is also a community club and you need to think about bringing these boys through, and it's part of the culture of the club. But I think if you look at the overall spend, I don't know exactly how much it is, but I would be surprised if it was less than £4 million a year. Certainly can't be far off. Aberdeen spends, I think they announced recently they spend £2 million a year on their youth setup, so I'd be surprised if Rangers wasn't more than that significantly. If you look at that spend and you aggregate that over 10 years, and you look at the issues that Rangers are having, as Stevie's pointed out, the very, very best youngsters, the Billy Gilmores of this world, the Rory Wilsons of this world, these guys are snapped up before they hit the youth team. Now, that is because of their immense talent, and these two players are, I think, would be, obviously Billy's would be the best player at Rangers. Rory Wilson would have had 150 games by now, I would imagine. Those guys are always going to get snapped up, but Brexit has meant that they're even more likely to be snapped up, because the best players in France, the best players in Italy, the best players in Denmark are no longer available to be picked up by the Premier League clubs. And then the second tier of players, the ones that are maybe not certainties to make a professional career, but ones that are very good, the Leon Kings, the Alex Dowries of this world. As Stevie so elegantly said earlier on, these are the guys that are having to be tied up on long-term deals, because there's interest from Manchester City, there's interest from Manchester United, there's interest from Chelsea in these players. Is it because they're brilliant, brilliant players, or is it because those clubs need a structure? They need players to fill out their teams so that the diamonds that they have are in a structure that sees them succeed. And I've heard a lot about these clubs coming in and looking for jersey fillers and being able to prepare big offers to entice these people away. And obviously agents are looking at the money, and they're looking at the potential for 4 or 5 year contracts down south that could set these young kids up for life, even if they don't make it. So you can understand completely why they're getting advised to look at deals like that. So Rangers, to match that, have to come in and offer a really good deal. Now, the one that gets talked about all the time is Leon King. Obviously, we understand that he's on £10,000 a week plus in his deal with Rangers, and that was because there was so much interest in him from down south, and Rangers had to move to tie him up. He was getting Champions League minutes at one point, but he hasn't developed. And what you're left with is you're paying a guy so much money, you can't really move him on even out on loan because it doesn't make financial sense. And it's a really, really difficult scenario. And I think we're in that scenario with a number of players now. So you ask yourself, if you're getting sort of checkmated in these situations around the sort of second tier, the third tier won't make it because they're not good enough. The first tier's going out the door anyway. Maybe you'd be better taking that spend. Say, for example, it is £4 million that they're spending. Say you bring the youth system down to a 1 million spend and you use that 3 million to pick up the best players every year in Scotland. Is that a better scenario? I think there needs to be a level of realpolitik about where are we right now. Obviously, every single one that has Rangers, every single person that has Rangers' best interest at heart wants to see young players coming through that understand the club, that are steeped in the culture and the history, and they know exactly what it means to pull on that jersey. But the reality is right now, Brexit has thrown a massive spanner in the works. And this has happened to every club in Scotland, but it's particularly affecting the two biggest clubs because they've got the best talent. And if a Chelsea comes knocking, a Manchester City comes knocking, a Man United comes knocking nowadays, I don't need to tell you two about the glamour of the Premier League. Now, we can look back on the 90s and what Rangers was at those times, the biggest club in Britain. You know, you could go and get the England captain, you can go and get the England goalkeeper, you could go and get the best players from Holland, you could, you know, that was something that could have been done then. Now it's a completely different environment. I don't think the attraction is the same for a young, uber-talented kid to sign on. They all want to go down to the Premier League because that's the glamour, that's the money. And I think it's a really, really, really difficult situation. I think all options are going to have to be assessed. That's my take on
it. Just
throwing a hand grenade in there for Stevie.
Multiman 78, he's got me chuckling away here because it says realpolitik quality side. I just taking issue with something you said there, Johnny. But just on Leon King, surely the club could have put him out on loan. I'm not having that. Last season, he stagnated at Rangers. We all know this. They can pay his wages and send him out to play games. I think he has wasted 2 years of his career at Rangers. I don't think there'd be many that would argue with that. It's important he goes out and starts playing matches for his own footballing career sake. Stevie, what do you make of Johnny's points there? There were a load of them.
Interesting. I think it's certainly worth a discussion now when you've got, as you said, such a kind of void between the kind of after 18, like where do they go? What football do they play? And, you know, the boys up until that age can still play in the B team commitment, so that's not quite an issue. But it's difficult because a lot of people will be dead against it because it's youth football and we need to bring through our own. But we also need to start thinking, why are we investing so much in these young lads when there's no platform to give them? And that was my point surrounding, you talk about Leon King stagnating, but arguably Alex Lowry and Cole McKinnon are the exact same because there's been nowhere to put them. And Alex Lowry was on a crest of a wave at Rangers and suddenly hit a brick wall because he had nowhere to play and nowhere to go. And Cole McKinnon, very much the same. Cole McKinnon could easily be Connor Barron at Rangers, but he stagnated for 2 years and there's nowhere for him to go. And that's the biggest issue. And it's the same issues that's going to hit Bailey Rice, and it's the same issues that are going to hit Zach Lovelace if he does stay, if we don't get them in the first team, which, to be fair, the manager does want to integrate them and things like that. So that's a lot of what Johnny says is right. And I wouldn't be surprised if 4 million is a polite estimate in terms of what we're paying for the youth development and running Auchenhowie for a year. I think it's a lot higher than that. And you maybe need to look at it and just from a business side of it, like Johnny says, and because it has changed, the landscape has changed. You can no longer go out and get Rino Gattuso or Luigi Riccio as it was in the good old days and see if these boys can make it. You can no longer do that anymore. So I get what Johnny's saying. I think in order to make a decision like that, you would need to really look at everything. We need to have the facts in front of us, right? How much does it cost to to work Auchenhowie for a year? What are the pros and cons behind going down a route like Jonny says? And you can still have your youth set up, absolutely, but if they're not, you need to. That's where you would need to be a wee bit more cutthroat, wouldn't it? Like if you don't have a pathway to the first team for Cole McKinnon at 18, he would need to move on, and it's a real. But you would end up losing some talent who would go to play at a team that could give him first team football, and he would flourish. And I just wonder, and I said to the manager the other night, and Jonny and I sat at the Glasgow Cup final, and we both said, I think this is right. We both said that Nsiala had something, but very raw and not ready for the first team. He's came into the first team and had 4 games, but, and this is something I tried to ask the manager, and he wasn't going to answer it, but I would be surprised privately if he didn't think similar to me, which is his growth from game 1 to game 4 the other night is massive.
3 games, is it not? He said 3 games.
Okay, right, 3 games. I thought it was 4, but his growth from his first appearance at Rangers, positionally, passing on the ball, to the other night, where he looked like a cultured centre-half with his left foot, and he was spraying the ball. I think 71 out of 80 passes, he converted 91%, duels won, etc. And he was absolutely brilliant. But what I'm trying to get at is his jump in performance levels at such a short space of time make me think, is there other players in the B team that we're missing out on? Should we have been playing Cole McKinnon more? Should we have been playing Robbie Fraser more? Can we save ourselves £5-6 million on Ridvan Yilmaz by playing Robbie Fraser? These are all questions that come into the kind of argument for me. But like Jonny says, because they stagnate so much, and Leon King's the obvious one, but I don't think he's the only one who's on big money at Rangers and not getting exposed to first team football. So,
Stevie, that can I just jump in here? I think that's really interesting, the point you make, this sort of accidental exposure to first team football that suddenly propels someone forward. You don't have to go very far back to probably the greatest youth talent of my lifetime at Rangers, Barry Ferguson, was on the verge of a £100,000 move to Dundee United at one point in his Rangers career. You know, he wasn't being played that much when he first came through as a kid, and it was Advocat coming in that really accelerated and changed his career. You look across the city, their best talent, Kieran Tierney, coming through. He was their 4th choice left back, and it was basically a foreign manager coming in and going, this lad's someone that deserves a chance. It seems to me a lot of the best young players that come through in Scotland, it's almost like accidental. It's not, we've got this really, really great talent. And in fact, the ones that everyone says, this guy's brilliant, he's going to be brilliant, they often don't actually make it. It's a very strange...
Kelvin Bass is another one, a more recent example, really. He's come in...
Another one?
Yeah. I think there's a fair argument to be had there, just chucking them in and see how they get on. Like we touched on earlier, it's a sink or swim situation.
I don't even know if it's chucking them in so much. It's trusting them more. That why spend... And I don't mean... this is only an example, so I'm not rubbishing Ridvan Yilmaz. I'm not saying anything about it. But Borna Barisic was your established left-back for so long. Robbie Fraser's not a young kid. He's 21, 22 years old. Why are we not subjecting him to more first-team football in games where he could have got it? And let's be honest, without Rangers at home in Scotland dominate the ball so much that most often at Ibrox you can get guys in for 20 minutes, but there has been a reluctance, and that goes back to all our managers basically, to trust the youth set up a lot more. And look, 100% in today's world that Philippe Clement will know a lot more than I do about the ability of players and where they are, and the gulf between B team to first team is huge. And I get that, I understand that completely. A lot of us, and I asked them about Curtis, because he scored so many goals. I'm having a blank here. And he scored, Finlay Curtis, thank you. He scored so many goals at youth level the last couple of years. Should he be in and around the first team? Should he be getting exposed to the first team? If you score 60 goals in a couple of years, Derek, at any level, then we should be considering where he is in the first team. And That's the kind of thing that I wonder if exposing these guys, giving them a chance, where would it take them? So there's a definite opinion of mine that we don't trust our youth enough. When it comes, we would rather spend money, and then you look at the situation we're in with wages and things like that. We would rather spend money on these guys than play a youth player. And I'm not talking about suddenly making them your number one centre midfielder or your number one striker. I'm talking about integrating them into the squad, Derek, and being squad players and then seeing how they progress. You know what I mean? But we don't seem to even trust lads at that age at all. And I just wonder, to reiterate, when you look at Clinton Nsiala's jump and you look at his performances in the B team, are we missing out on more young lads at that level? And I think there's a possibility we are.
Yeah. Well, last season, Cole McKinnon came off the bench against Benfica and did a turn. And you're thinking, okay, this is him going to push on now. And we haven't really seen him since, have we? Which is just a bit bonkers. Baylor Rice comes off the bench
He's
against
a good
Nice.
player, though. Cole McKinnon is a good player, Derek. And I'm not saying he can be better than Connor Barron, but we should be aiming to make him our player in there when he's homegrown and stuff. Third, fourth choice midfielder, even fourth, fifth choice midfielder, and then integrate him, get him playing more, get him minutes in the first team, and see how he progresses.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is Rangers haven't had a real big success in terms of going out on loan and making a name for yourself at another club from a youth player since probably, I was discussing this the other day, I think, when I was on the briefing, maybe Alan McGregor or Charlie Adam. You know, those were young guys that went out and seized the moment. That's just not happened. And I interviewed Craig Mulholland the year before he left and sat down with him for an hour and a half and chatted to him about youth development. And one of the things that he said was, look, we need a youth player to go out and loan, grasp the nettle, grasp that club and show, like, I'm a Rangers player, I'm going to stand above. And not just for themselves, but as a beacon to the youth setup and to the rest of the kids there. You can go out and do this in men's football. You can go out and try a different environment and thrive. And I think some of that is why this whole idea of the B team has been such a central part. I think there's almost a feeling that Gen Z, who we know from the data are massively different to the millennials, who are quite similar in a lot of ways to Gen X before them. But Gen Z are quite different because they're the digital generation, Derek. Right, okay. So they're almost demanding different things and they require a different style of management. And I think that's all part of it. They kind of feel like if you throw them into a new environment, they don't handle that as well, maybe as the previous generations did. So they want to almost like closet them in this environment where they can control all these factors and get the best out of them. It's fascinating. There's so many aspects to it that you don't really think about until you talk to people in the game and they lay it out. And no one's got the perfect answer. I mean, you talk about AZ Alkmaar, who've done a fantastic job in Holland, but the culture in Holland's completely different. You know, the environment's completely different. And Rangers, the demands are so big, you know, for a player making it into the first team. There's just so few that have that kind of.
Well, I'd like to see him get a chance. Yeah, I'd like to see them get a chance starting Sunday. Some of them surely deserve to start and show what they're capable of. So my camera was unplugged there. Let me.
Derek's having a great technical day, Stevie, isn't he? He's not only breaking up, but literally disappearing.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me? My camera says it's unplugged there, which is just bonkers. No idea what's going on.
Listen, Derek, the view's massively improved for the viewers, so let's not worry about it too much.
Yeah, there we go. Apologies, folks. I'm having a nightmare this morning. I'm conscious of the time. Let's move on. Transfer news yesterday. No real surprise, really. Rabbi Matondo, Kieran Dell have been told to find new clubs and expected to move on this month. It's not going to happen for them at Rangers. We spoke about this, Rabbi Matondo, when I was on with Chris yesterday, or Joshua, sorry. He's been a very expensive signing for the money that Rangers have paid to the output, Stevie. It's important Rangers try and get him off the wage bill in one way, shape or form.
Of course it is. And Rabbi Matondo averages availability between 10 and 12 games a season, and he's getting upward towards 25 to 30 grand, and it's absolutely ludicrous for a football club that are leaking money like a sieve. And we've spoken about this, Derek, about getting value for money, and I got a lot of criticism for being on this show in the summer and saying that I would take £500,000 to move Rabbi Matondo on. And my opinion around that was based purely on our output for him and what he gives you. And I just don't think he's value for money. Kieran Dowell looks like a guy that is really good at fives and somehow has made it into professional football. I think he chucked it at Rangers ages ago because he's come on, and even in his fleeting short time, and the manager will be giving him time to try and make him do something, do wee cameos, and he's just not grasped a bit of it. So they two are the high-profile ones, but they're not the only ones that have been told to leave the club. There'll be others.
Yeah.
There is others with value that they won't want it known because they won't want another Cantwell situation where boys that are scoring goals and have value to them, suddenly Rangers make it known that they're available and things, and they lose their value. So if you go back to the CEO, Patrick Stewart's kind of address on the Saturday, he said that they were making, conversations with players that are no longer value for money and no longer contributing to the first team, that they could move on. So it's no surprise now that the likes of Matondo, Dowell, and a few others are learning that they're available. I don't think that Tom Lawrence, for example, we would keep him on, although Tom Lawrence is a good kind of, he gets good numbers and things like that. I just don't think that value for money anymore. I know that Niels Coppin and Johnny will know this, is very, very much on top of value for money and what they're providing the squad and things like that. And I just think that these boys potentially aren't available as much as they should be. Rabbi Matondo's availability is atrocious. It really is for a first-team player. So I've got no issues with moving these boys on and getting more value for money. In the end, neither of them have really worked out at Rangers. So I don't have an issue with those decisions. And you'll probably find, Derek, though, when you look at the likes of seeing the reserve team, Devine, Cole McKinnon, Alex Lowry, these boys will be moved on in the summer as well, who are all going out of contract. And the sad thing about it is the amount of money they're getting a week, it's like saving a first-team wage as well when you combine it all. So there will be a realignment again, or an ongoing realignment of what they're doing with the wages and what value we're getting. And to be honest, I am in no way critical of that, because I have sat here for the good part of a couple of years with you, Derek, and discussed it. So I think what they're finally doing in terms of, our squad and what we should be paying and contracts, etc., is a lot better. And I'll harp on quickly, final point, and Johnny will kind of maybe agree with this as well, is that when they moved Connor Goldson out last summer and they brought in Robin Proper, it was criticised and we've downgraded and things like that. I understand that and understand that point of view. The difference from Robin Proper coming in at just over $1 million and a half is that his contract that he's on makes him now attractive to teams in Holland in the summer if they come back in. It's no longer a Sam Lammers 30 grand a week. Well, we can't afford £2 million. You're looking at Robin Proper and saying, right, Rangers, he's not really worked there, but we know how good he is in Holland. He's on an attractive contract that we can pay. And that's the difference from how we're working it now and how the kind of realignment and wage structure is happening. So I think that's a worthwhile point in what we are doing as a club in order to not only bring the wages down, but just to realign them into something that's more workable and much better for the club and for buying and selling players.
Listen, I don't think it's any secret to say that the Rangers wage bill has been out of control for quite a while. And you just have to look across the city. I'm led to believe that Kyogo Furuhashi is on about 20k a week. Greg Taylor, who's out of contract, can't agree a new deal. I'm led to believe is on under 10k. And that's a player that is obviously contributed to a great deal of their success. You look at Kyogo and the number of goals he scored in Old Firm games. Fundamentally, they've controlled their wage bill much better than Rangers have. And I think there needs to be a more ruthless approach. And as Stevie says, Niels Coppin is absolutely looking at that and wants to get bang for his buck from his players. Ultimately, everyone talks about Ryan Kent and Alfredo Morelos, 16.5 million offered by Lille. We know that for a fact. And Kent, there was a lot of discussion that Leeds came in, and I'm pretty sure that their offer was around £14 million. So you're talking about £30 million that was turned down for those two players. But actually, people don't talk about Tavernier. They don't talk about Goldson. Those are players that Rangers should have moved on as well as part of a functioning player trading model. The idea that Nathan Patterson was there, a young kid coming through, really the ideal situation there would have been to sell Tavernier in his prime, bring through Nathan Patterson, and then sell Nathan Patterson. That's the more common sense approach. In an ideal world, I know it's not as easy as that. I'm playing Football Manager here, and it's very easy to do with retrospect, and perhaps the money just wasn't there for Tavernier. But you understand what I'm saying, and Connor Goldson, we know that he had a downward swing in terms of his form, and his final season was pretty lamentable as a Rangers player. But there was a time when Connor Goldson was a real steady Eddie and had played well enough to get himself a move back down south. And I think Rangers have had a number of players where they've been boxed in to giving them bigger and bigger and bigger contracts to the point where they earn right good money. And that's why ultimately, before this summer intervention took place, Rangers' wage bill was bigger than Celtic's. That's a fact. And listen, I think they're still dealing with the fallout from that. Yeah. What I would say as a caveat, and I don't know if Stevie would be agreed, I'd love to hear his opinion on this. I actually think the summer business is starting to look pretty good. Igamane, Inciala, Conor Barron, these are all good players for the future. Jeffy, I really like. He's not perfect, but for the money, 500k. I don't think Igamane was the 1.5 million spend that people are talking about either. I think it was significantly less than that. There's clauses in there I'm sure Rangers will have to pay out, but I think for the money and what's been brought in, I think there's a core there, a foundation there, that if the next couple of windows are good, Rangers will have a right good team.
I think that it's interesting because the Igamane situation means that the summer, regardless, you could have 8 duds in him, and Niels Coppin's one because he will earn Rangers a lot of money, and Rangers will look for top dollar. And I remember having a discussion about would I take 10 to 12 million for Igamane in this window, and the answer is flat out no. You would be looking, as unrealistic as this might be, upwards to 20 for Hamza Igamane.
Stevie, without a doubt, the guy's got 4.5 years left in his contract. There's no pressure whatsoever. None. Like zero. Selling a guy like that for 10 million is chicken feed in this current market. Celtic paid £11 million for Engels. I mean, you need to be realistic. And I know people will turn around and say, well, £10 million is a lot of money for Rangers to bring in. I could not agree more. You cannot sell a striker with the ceiling that he's got for that kind of money. I would be absolutely adamant that would be a poor business. 15 million plus for Igamane, based on what we've seen so far. There was one moment in that game, I don't know if you two felt this as well. It was a miss, but to me, the miss and the moment underlined how much of a ceiling this kid's got. I think it was Czerny that put him through. He's one-on-one with the keeper. Does he blast it? No, he dinks it. Does he just dink it? No, he doesn't just dink it. He dinks it with backlift. He dinks it with backlift. It's an inch away. It goes just past the post. But just the sheer gall, the sheer gallousness to try that finish, that's not a Cyril Dessers finish. That's not even a Čolak finish. And I like Čolak as a player. I thought he was a right good finisher. That's next level finishing. To have the kind of composure and arrogance in a good way to try that finish. And to me, people talking about 10 million, Stevie, I'm with you 100%. That should not even be under discussion. That's chicken feed.
he's a once in a generational talent for Rangers that, we should be looking for more. But it goes back a wee bit to Coppin and to answer Johnny's question on the summer business. Coppin's won, so that one transfer. But then, as Johnny points out, you put Jeffy in that bargain. I really like Jeffy as well. Like Johnny, he's not perfect, but you spend $5 million on our other left back, and I think Jeffy's miles ahead of where Ridvan is at this moment in time. And I don't want to be. I've mentioned his name more than once this morning. It's not a personal thing with Ridvan. And then you look at Connor Barron, who's dipped a wee bit, but he will come back into it again. And then Inciala. If Inciala, there's two ways that it's going to go for Clinton Inciala. He'll continue to thrive and he'll be magnificent, and we will at one point lose him also, or he will become a steady Eddie, as Johnny put it, and become a really good squad player and a good defender for us at our level. So either way, you're winning off of that. We have to be careful that we don't propel him too quickly and start making out he's a new Calvin Bassey and things like that. Give the boy time, get him minutes under his belt and things like that, because he hasn't played a lot of professional games. But turns out the boy can cross as well, Derek. So he's got a wee bit of everything. And look, when you look back onto summer business, I happen to think that Robin Proper has started to settle a wee bit and started to look a bit better as well. Ironically, just as they're talking about him having a really bad injury the other night as well. So we just need to wait and see where he is with that. There was a discussion that it might be a bad one. So, in terms of summer business last season, I think that Coppin will get more wins than negatives, that's for sure. And this goes back to the point that even if you decide that Proper was a negative, he's no longer stuck. We're no longer stuck with a guy that we're paying 30 grand to. We're paying less than half that. And it's a new structure. So I think that it's certainly more inviting than we went through a summer, I think, under Beale in previous years, where everybody that came in, no matter what your name was, you got 30 grand a year, and 30 grand a week rather. And it was just, there was only going to be a point where it got to where it is now, where it's like, well, this is unsustainable. But we were all talking about that several years ago. So it is what it is. But in answer to Johnny's question, it's certainly looking like at the moment there's more wins. But even if it wasn't, Johnny, that one player in Hamza Igamane makes it all worthwhile from a Rangers point of view if you're going to get upwards to the mega money that we think will come for him. Because like you, I think this boy's his ceiling's incredible. He's so good to watch. He's got an arrogant strut to him, which I really like. And do you know what I like about him as well? When he plays with Danilo, it's like the old-fashioned two strikers up front. They play off each other, the wee 1-2. The wee 1-2 the other night, and then his shot where he just thundered it. I love that, because you don't see that anymore. People try and curl it. But a good old-fashioned bluter at goals, as you would call it, back in the old days of Scottish football. It was brilliant.
But that again, Stevie, that's a great point. I should have probably brought that up when I was talking about the dink. But this is a guy's capable of both finishes.
Yeah.
That immediately tells you about his ceiling and what he can do. Some people can only do one or the other. This is a guy that and I think, listen, one of the things that's different to him, we had Alfredo Morelos come in, and there was a structural flaw with Alfredo Morelos in that he liked to party. Let's be honest, he had a bit of a
you couldn't rely on the pitch
life. And the stories and rumours around Glasgow about Alfredo Morelos could fill 3 books. But I think this lad's got his head screwed on. He's I don't think that's going to be an issue with him. And I just like the way he's built for Scottish football. He's got those big, thick tree trunk legs. He plants himself into the ground. He's not going to be bullied by anyone. Listen, this is a find. There's no doubt about it. And I don't think Rangers will be keen to ship him out quickly to get in the quick buck. I think that would be a wildly
he's already spoken about it.
Short-sighted move. I think they need to think of the long term and what they have. As Stevie said, this is not one that's just one of a cycle and you'll be able to replace them. This is a needle in a haystack they found, and you need to make the maximum out of it.
I would say as well. Sorry, Sorry, can I make just a really quick point, Johnny? Maybe I was one of the ones that thought we put Niels Coppen in too quickly into his position, and perhaps we could have just left it a wee bit longer. But the reality is that if Niels Coppen produces a find like that every summer, more or less, and it's really difficult. You can't find an Igamane every summer. That's not what I mean. But if you find a first-team player like that at our level, maybe won't go to Hamza Igamane's level because I think he's a generational superstar, kind of potentially. If he does that, then he's more than done his job. And in that summer last year, when you think about potentially 3 or 4 complete hits, then yeah, he deserves. And the more it goes on, the more you're looking at it being a positive summer for Rangers, and we really want the club at this moment in time to be looking at the summer to be doing the same thing as well.
Yeah, I was going to say I like the fact he wears black boots, which you don't really see much these days. But yeah, real throwback. But King Charles Spaniel says, see how Igamane does against Man United. I cannot wait to see him being unleashed at Old Trafford. I think he'll revel in, real relish that atmosphere down there. And Colin with the point says, looking forward to Amad Diallo against Jefte. Of course, United his first ever senior hat trick last night, did Amad against Southampton as Man United came back from 1-0 down to win that game. I don't know about you boys, but I've got a good feeling about Rangers going down there next week. I know, Stevie, you think it could be a tad difficult. Stevie, Johnny, your thoughts on that one?
Listen, I thought Spurs, that I said it publicly here, I thought they would take Rangers apart, and you saw what happened. Rangers were extremely unlucky. They were a Cyril Dessers finish away from beating Spurs, so I don't want to make any rash calls on it. I mean, Man United are significantly, I think, worse as a team. You know, Spurs have got their injury problems. I think if they didn't have that, they'd be a lot better in terms of the league. Manchester United are a bit flaky, aren't they? But they've still got quality throughout. And Old Trafford's always difficult, but their home form's diabolical. I suppose Rangers' away form's not great either, so it's going to be
in Europe. I'm not necessarily anxious about it, to be honest. Stevie, you changed your mind after watching the game last night?
No, no. Listen, it's not that I fear a trip to Old Trafford. I'm more worried about Tannadice on Sunday after it, but. I just think that with the injury levels that we've got, and in the European squad, Diamandi's suspended as well. You look at Suter not being there, Butland potentially not being there. It's good that Tav and Balogun are back in. It's not quite as threadbare, but what happens if Proper does have a long-term injury? Who's your centre back? Because Nsiala's not in the European squad, so you're starting to have little issues there that could become difficult. I think, you know what, though, I think when we talk about Amad Diallo and things like that, the best thing that Manchester United could do, they've got a big game against Fulham the weekend after, is just rest him. No need to play him in that game. Too big a risk.
Wrap him up in cotton wool.
Absolutely.
Derek looks like he's frozen again, Stevie. Frozen in time. It's actually my favourite Derek, is Derek paused, contemplating, frozen in time. Listen, I think I should wrap this up rather than let him come back in 3 or 4 minutes and us sitting there awkwardly staring into space. Let's just say thanks to everyone for watching. It's been a great one. We're going to make sure that we reach out to EE and ask them what's going on with Derek's Wi-Fi, because there's certainly some sort of problem there. It needs to be fixed. There he is. Off he pops. Stevie, thanks again for coming on, and we will catch up with everyone once again over the weekend after the Fraserburgh game. And then we'll be back with the morning briefing on Monday. Until next time, thanks for watching, and we will catch you later.